whatever happens to the ceasefire, it is, of course, news that this deal came to be through a strong arm move by Donald Trump. And so that is sort of the focus of this piece here. So go ahead, take it away.
All right. The best reporting on this really is Haaretz. And it's funny, you want to see how things get slanted in the American media. In the Wall Street Journal, Trump's fixer that he sent over there that basically told everybody to go get their shine box gets along well with the Israeli delegation. Right. So let's go to the Israeli source, Haaretz. Trump's Mideast envoy forced Netanyahu to accept a Gaza plan he repeatedly rejected. Last Friday evening, Stephen Witkoff, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's Middle East envoy, called from Qatar to tell Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's aides that he would be coming to Israel the following afternoon. The aides politely explained that was in the middle of the Sabbath, but that the Prime Minister would gladly meet him Saturday night. Witkoff's blunt reaction took them by surprise. He explained to them in salty English that Shabbat was of no interest to him. His message was loud and clear. Thus, in an unusual departure from official practice, the Prime Minister showed up at his office for an official meeting with Witkoff, who then returned to Qatar to seal the deal.
See, that's some alpha art of the deal shit there.
Yeah, fucking Sabbath, all right? How much money we give you? How much money we give? You get in that office now!
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, I'm not fucking interested in your fucking Sabbath. I mean, that is, look, if you talk about, like, subtly alpha moves that you can make on a negotiating adversary, you know, call them up, say, we have to meet Saturday night. That's the only time I have, Saturday night. That puts them on their heels from moment one.
Yeah. A week before Trump's inauguration, Jerusalem already sees a change in the rules of the game that has broken the deadlock in the hostage negotiations. Unusually, the outgoing Biden administration has let Witkoff lead the process on the grounds that any obligations the United States undertakes will be incumbent on Trump, not on Biden. Witkoff is a Jewish real estate investor and developer who is close to Trump. He doesn't have the background of the kind of people who usually fill diplomatic roles. Quote, Witkoff isn't a diplomat. He doesn't talk like a diplomat. He has no interest in diplomatic manners and diplomatic protocols, says a senior Israeli diplomat who spoke on condition of anonymity. He's a businessman who wants to reach a deal quickly and charges ahead unusually aggressively. In fact, Witkoff has forced Israel to accept a plan that Netanyahu had repeatedly rejected over the past half year. Hamas has not budged from its position that the hostages' freedom must be conditioned on the release of Palestinian prisoners, the easy part, and a complete Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, the hard one. Netanyahu rejected this condition, and thus was born the partial deal proposed by Egypt. Initially, the talk was of a limited humanitarian deal. More and more conditions were slowly appended until it grew into a much bigger proposal with clear outlines: a hostage release, new regional arrangements, and full withdrawal. The Philadelphia corridor, which Netanyahu last summer termed the bedrock of Israel's existence, is part of the deal. At Egypt's request, Israel will fully withdraw from it in the first phase. Now, I'm just going to say there was another follow-up article from Haaretz that dropped today, is scathing about Netanyahu, that claims that Netanyahu's argument that the corridor was so vital to Israel was always a red herring to keep the war going. It's hard to know how Netanyahu feels about this aggressive behavior. While it provides an excuse he can give to his base, he may resent being dragged into an unwanted deal that will end the war and possibly lead to political upheaval at home. His propaganda machine is pushing the no-choice narrative that it's Trump. On Monday, laments began to be heard on Channel 14 that Trump isn't what we thought. I'm surprised all the senior officials in the U.S. administration are saying the same thing, Yotam Zimri said on the Patriots program. Quote, if this doesn't happen by the time Trump comes in, Hamas will understand what hell is. I don't understand the Israeli interest and at least not waiting for Trump, Yenan Magal answered. It's because Trump is pressing to do it. That's what's happening. So this is how sick a society this is. You've got this person saying, why don't we wait for Trump? He promised hell. He promised hell on that. They haven't suffered enough hell yet. They haven't suffered enough hell. Let's hold out.
Yeah, no, they were all excited that he won. We knew they wanted him to
bring
win.
hell. Yeah.
Right.
Zimri. So all his people have been lying. It's a big disappointment. Magal. He talks about hell and in the meantime sends his envoy to sign a deal. It's a deal whose impact will be very difficult. That's the truth. He added that the last remaining hope is that Hamas will reject a deal. Quote, a cabinet minister told me we need to pray again that God will harden Pharaoh's heart.
Wow.
Yes, if anyone familiar with the biblical story, the Pharaoh kept wanting to make a deal, and God, to make a point, would use his Jedi mind trick on him to make him not make a deal. Monday morning, another Netanyahu mouthpiece, Jacob Bardugo, said, the pressure Trump is exerting right now is not the kind that Israel expected from him. The pressure is the essence of the matter.
Well, what did we say in the last? Sorry to pause this for a minute, but what did we say in our last segment, which we just dropped today as a clip, when Trump shared that video of Jeffrey Sachs? We said he probably wants to make a deal before he's sworn in, right? Because he sees this whole thing.
He doesn't want to own it
as a giant liability. And at the time, it didn't look like that was going to do anything. But apparently, times have changed.
Times have changed. They sent a fixer. They sent a New Yorker. Case in point, Israeli media is crystal clear. This is from Mohammed Shahada, put this together. All it took to get a ceasefire deal done was pressure from Trump on Netanyahu, who folded immediately. Biden refused to do that for 15 months.
Yep.
As a Saudi diplomat told me, Biden considered any pressure on Israel as tainting his legacy. Wow.
It just goes to show you how inflexible they are in their thinking. It's truly, in that sense, it really is the banality of evil, because they just saw support for Israel as being non-negotiable, permanent, inevitable, unchangeable, unconditional. This is the way things have to be, and so we have to pursue this course. And what we're seeing now is that actually the United States held the cards all along. And this war continued for all this time because Biden wanted
the country couldn't exist without us.
Of course. And that this war continued because Biden wanted it to. He supported it. He supported it. Plain and fucking simple.
Right. And Harris promised to continue to support it.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get into that.
She wouldn't have sent the guy in on the Sabbath.
Of course, they have to respect cultures and religions and traditions, right? So here to focus in on one of the things he shared, Netanyahu didn't want to end up like Canada or spend his retirement in Greenland. Netanyahu has convinced himself to accept Trump's outline, which was already being considered in May. We'll get into that too. All that remains is to mourn the lost time, the hostages who were murdered in captivity, and the fighters who were killed in vain. A lot of people are making that point on this side of the ocean too. Here's Glenn Greenwald shared this. This is going around a lot. We're not going to show the video because I haven't been able to find anybody who's made a subtitled version.
If you have ADD like me, that video will give you a meltdown. It's like impossible to keep up with what he's saying. And like the auto-generated Twitter subtitles don't even keep up with what he's saying.
All right, so Greenwald here says, Israel extremists on television are blaming Trump for what they say is the imminent ceasefire deal in Gaza, claiming that Trump forced the deal on Netanyahu without first letting Israel completely annex northern Gaza and block all humanitarian aid from entering. And according to the translation here, what this figure is saying, stunned like the true believer he is, Netanyahu proxy Errol Segal laments, quote, "We're the first to pay a price for Trump's election. We all thought it was going to be the transies. First they came for the transies. We said nothing. The deal
Why
is
don't
being...
you worry about the men and the women sports?
The men, they're swimming in the
They're
pool
swimming
with
in
the
the pools.
women. The deal is being forced upon us. We thought we'd take control of northern Gaza, that they'd let us impede humanitarian aid." How sick a society do you have to have that a person could go on TV and say something like that, not have it be the end of their public life?
Right, of course.
For that to be a sensible thing to say. So speaking of, is kind of a side note on this story, National Security Minister Adamar Ben-Gvir admitted in a post on X Twitter on Tuesday that his party had prevented a hostage deal from being achieved on numerous occasions. Quote, "In the past year, through our political power, we succeeded in preventing this deal from moving forward time and time again," he noted. According to Ben-Gvir, additional elements have since joined the government and now support the deal, and we no longer hold the balance of power. Ben-Gvir's remarks were made as part of his call to Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich. What would they do without their big book of rejected Star Wars names?
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
To leave the government if a hostage deal would be approved. The additional element in question is the United Right Party, which increased the size of the coalition from 64 to 68 members of the Knesset. This means that Ben-Gvir and his 6 MKs are no longer the difference makers. Ben-Gvir and Smotrich together, however, pose a credible threat to the government, and the combined threat could hamper Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's motivation to see the deal through. I don't think it's going to go that way, but okay. An Israeli official said in response to Ben-Gvir's comments, quote, "Contrary to Minister Ben-Gvir's claims, the only party that has managed to prevent a hostage release deal since November 2023 is the Hamas terror organization, which has remained obstinate, just as senior American officials have repeatedly stated." Now, all of the reporting that we have, and we're going to see this in some of the tweets that have gone out, is that Hamas essentially agreed to this deal a year ago. Same exact deal that they're going to wind up having.
Well, yeah. And if you remember just the last article you read there, where one of the people I don't recall their name said, "Well, now we just have to pray that Hamas rejects the deal." Right. Because now our arm has been twisted. It had always been Israel rejecting the deals. There had been several full hostage exchange on the table that Israel rejected all along.
Right.
Now that their arm was twisted into saying yes, now they have to hope the other side says no. That's almost not that. I mean, that's not going to happen.
No.
Right. New York Times now reporting in its final. Washington Post now reporting. Israel-Gaza ceasefire deal and hostage release in final stages, according to Qatar. So it looks like it is very, very close to official.
Yeah, I mean, reading between, you can tell if you're kind of a news junkie which way the wind is blowing.
Yeah,
I mean, I would have been very surprised if it didn't happen. Yeah. Meetings are set to be held during the day in Qatar to finalize the deal. Now, this is interesting. On Tuesday afternoon, Religious Zionist Party coordinator MK Ohad Tal said in a speech at an event called the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast at President-elect Donald Trump's estate at Mar-a-Lago that Trump, quote, "should not support a deal that will lead this total evil of Hamas in power, not to support a deal that will leave behind a vast majority of hostages." Apparently, I think in the first phase, it's 33 hostages. to be released.
But they're all to be released as it phases out.
As it phases in, right? But the first phase is 33. Okay, so
what they're probably afraid of. Sorry to cut you off. They're probably afraid. What if the 33 get out and Netanyahu breaks the ceasefire? Then what happens? That could be a concern.
Sure. So there has been quite a lot of reaction on this. So Prem Thacker here, almost 11 months ago, this is from a CNN article. U.S. President Joe Biden said that he hopes there will be a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict by next Monday, as the death toll in Gaza approaches 30,000, according to health officials.
I remember that story very well.
Yep. Point being, this could have been done 11 months ago if Joe Biden had just sent some New York real estate guy who didn't give a shit about the Sabbath.
Yep.
Ryan Grimm, this deal has been available at least since May, arguably since last November after the first prisoner exchange. Every hostage who has died since, every Palestinian killed or who died of malnutrition or a treatable disease is a direct result of Biden's refusal to force the deal. I hope he's cognizant enough to understand how fully he has been exposed by Donald Trump as a mass murdering fanatic.
That's the sweet justice in all this, man. I mean, they are just what utter devastation. I mean, the libs are just in. You talk about shambles. This is shambles.
It's shambolic.
Yeah.
Jeremy Scahill. Important to note, the Gaza ceasefire deal that may be reached soon is overwhelmingly consistent with the deal Hamas officially agreed to on July 2nd. Biden allowed Netanyahu to torch that deal and continue the genocide with a steady flow of U.S. weapons and political support. This is Afif Akrabawi. Every Kamala Harris supporter who gaslit, bullied, and silenced Palestinians through their own genocide, reveling in smug threats of Trump being worse, can burn in the very hell they helped create.
Yes.
Trump is brokering a ceasefire before he's even back in the White House.
Amen. I mean, that's it right there. I mean, that's it. How many people, tried to browbeat the abandoned Harris people into saying, you're only making it worse.
Well, Uncommitted made that whole video that they almost certainly got paid for by the DNC.
Yep.
Sabby, if Trump accomplishes a ceasefire in Gaza, the Democratic Party is done. We'll have to wait to see if it happens, but if it does, I don't see how Dems come back from this. I'm singing that song. Bikram Gill. Looks like a vote for Kamala Harris really was a vote for continuing the genocide and Holocaust in Gaza. What a permanent indictment this is on U.S. liberalism and the Democratic Party. You have officially shown yourselves to be more genocidal than Trump.
100%.
He's not a Trump fan here. Medea Benjamin. I pray that we wake up tomorrow to a ceasefire deal. It appears to be virtually the same deal Hamas accepted months ago. The new element is Trump, who insisted that Netanyahu take the deal, something Biden never did. Biden leaves a legacy of genocide.
Yep.
And just a comment here. This is what we, who have been speaking out against this, have been saying. I mean, it didn't take any great foreign policy insight to say we are funding and equipping this genocide. Just with a word from the United States, it will end. Oh, no, it's complicated. No, it's really not more complicated than that. Clearly, it is not more complicated than that. Donald Trump is not even in office yet. He sent a real estate guy, got Netanyahu before him on the carpet on the Sabbath. Told him, you're going to sign that paper. You're going to sign that paper. You're going to have trouble. That's it. Days.
That's
Within
it.
days. Over.
Yep.
All right. So Mehdi Hassan jumping out in front of the parade like so many people are trying to do now. Some of us said a year ago that the U.S. president has the power to impose a deal and a ceasefire on Netanyahu and Israel. Well, true enough. If President-elect Trump can do it, Biden could have done it for the past year. Shame on him and Blinken and the rest of them. Well, that's all well and good, but as our friend Anya Parampil points out, Mehdi supported Kamala Harris's presidential campaign. Here she says, I'm blocked, so please remind Mehdi Hassan that he spent the better part of last year telling us to vote for the woman serving Biden as he oversaw the slaughter of Gaza. Anyone who was scared into voting against Trump voted against this deal, period. Some of us said a year ago that a vote for Harris was a vote for more death. Amen, Anya. Amen. So, yeah, you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see, I was thinking already, Emma Vigeland tries to suggest that there was Nixonian or Reagan-esque secret agreement with Trump and Netanyahu, and that to not have a deal in order to hurt Harris's presidential chances. There's absolutely no indication of that in the reporting. That is a very good example of how these supposedly independent podcasters in the end function as Democrat Party shills. It is very, very obvious that the fault for this lays with Joe Biden. You cannot twist this into, oh, yeah, well, really? Trump kept it going. No. No, Biden kept it going. And Trump said, hey, you know what? I don't need that kind of trouble. I don't need that kind of trouble. I want this over before my inauguration. That's it.
Yep. And I'm sure that, they dangled a few carrots in front of them. Some items on Miriam Adelson's wish list. I'm sure they're going to get immunity. They're like the report said that I mentioned, a few segments back. They could protect them from the ICC. They could try and sanction countries that try to enforce the ICC ruling. I'm sure they will back them on their territorial ambitions in Syria. I'm sure, it looks like they want a war with Iran in this term. We hope that doesn't happen. We will see if that happens. I don't think it is fair to assume that Israel gets the total shaft, but, and this is what we said last time, I don't think Trump wants this on his hands when he takes office. No. He does not want this on his hands. That's why I don't think he wanted Netanyahu at the inauguration next week. This is a huge political liability for him. I think that's how he sees it, and I think he wanted it wrapped up, and he figured, hey, let me take my best shot at this, and it worked. It seems to have worked. Now, what the next phase of this war entails, which is the expansion of Greater Israel, now that that's underway, we will have to wait and see. I don't want to be too rosy-eyed and say we're completely out of the woods here, because we're not. But obviously, a huge step that should have been taken a year ago. Of course. It wasn't, because Joe Biden, and this is who the blame lies with, wanted this war to go on. Right. Whatever you could say, you could try and spin this however you want. You can try and say, well, he felt this, that way. In effect, this is Biden's war.
Well,
he wanted
the people around Biden. I mean, who knows?
Well,
he's
the
Biden
president.
decided,
I mean, obviously,
right?
I think Anthony Blinken was calling the shots, but whatever.
Right.
The history books will say this was Biden's war. This was Biden's genocide. It could have stopped at any time, and it didn't because ultimately he did not have the will to make that happen. Which, in plain English, means he didn't want to. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
And we've gotten some indication with Mehdi Hassan. Me too. Forget about the fact that I was pushing the Harris candidacy. And we've gotten some indication with Vigeland trying to suggest a secret deal with absolutely no evidence. But I am really curious to see how all the scumbags in our space who, as soon as Harris picked Tim Walz, decide to scream about the free school lunches and pretend that there was any reason to believe she was going to be better on this issue, substantively better on this issue, when she emphatically promised to continue to arm Israel emphatically.
Yeah, well, there was no end in sight with this under Kamala, which is why I made the analogy that I made. I said Trump is you're playing Russian roulette with one chamber empty, right? You know,
Right.
and for every 6 shots you fire, you're gonna get a free pass on one of them. You know, with them there was no chance.
With
we
Harris,
saw
it
the
was very
trajectory this was
clear.
on.
It was just, well, for one thing, it was very clear that the intention with Harris was to continue what they had with Biden, which was basically to not have a president.
Right.
So that they could
Of
just
course.
continue to run the country through a figurehead. So
Of course.
there
They
would
would
have
have kept
been
a lot of the same people. They'd have probably
Sure.
kept Anthony Blinken as Secretary of
there
State.
would have
They'd
been
kept almost
absolutely
everybody.
no change in policy. At least with Trump, you had some kind of a chance, however small. And as you point out, there is some reporting that the fix is in, that this is for show, that later on there will be a ceasefire broken. We'll see. I mean, if that's how it goes at that point, I mean, you know us, we'll cover it without any fear or favor.
Yeah,
But,
we were
hey,
very pessimistic about this. I did not think that this was
we have
going
always
to
said
happen.
we would be fair.
Yeah.
And hey, man, he gets this done. He deserves a lot of credit. If it turns out to be a feint and this starts up 2 weeks later again, we'll be there. But
Of course.
I'm not going to beat him up on something he hasn't done. If he actually gets this done, whatever his motivations, whatever his reasons, hey, we know with Harris, greater Israel. Absolutely. No question about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be clear, I still think you're looking at greater Israel, but I think, you know, in terms of the Gaza ceasefire, I think the prospects for that are, you know, at least, you know, now you seem to have one very, very close to on the table.
Right.
Please clap.